Hello, I'd like to welcome you to our seminar on AI tonight, and very happy to have all of you joining us here, along with our esteemed panelists who are Villanova alums, also working in the field in many different ways using AI. And I am Dr. Michele Marcolongo. I'm the Dean of the College of Engineering here at Villanova. So very happy to be with you tonight. I'd like to start by introducing our panelists. So we have Matthew Gaudet, a graduate from Villanova in 2000 with a degree in mechanical engineering. Today, he serves as the director of ethics programs for the School of Engineering at Santa Clara University, where he's charged with developing a program of moral formation for engineering students that aims at preparing future technologists for their pivotal role in the 21st century. As a scholar, Gaudet's research lies at the intersection of ethics and social science, with a particular interest in ethical questions regarding technology, war, disability, and the university. Most recently, he's been focused on the ethics of artificial intelligence, about which he's written several articles, as well as edited a special issue of the Journal of Moral Theology on Artificial Intelligence, and led a team of 20 scholars in authoring a forthcoming document from Vatican Dicastery on education and culture on the ethics of artificial intelligence. Gaudet lives in Oakland, California with his wife and 3 daughters, all avid Villanova basketball fans. He's up to you. Thank you. We also are very honored to have Kelvin Johnson, the co-founder and CEO of Brevity Incorporated, a Twin Cities-based company backed by 5 institutional investors. Brevity utilizes AI-powered software to assist professionals in delivering persuasive pitches and presentations. His expertise and innovative approach have garnered recognition, and he's been featured in prestigious publications such as the Minneapolis Business Journal and Star Tribune. Additionally, Kelvin's been invited to speak at the Twin Cities Startup Week. Originally hailing from West Philadelphia, Kelvin's journey has taken him to various cities, including New York, Dallas, and Denver. And he settled then in Minneapolis, although quite recently maybe sitting in Miami. Yep. So, with an impressive educational background, Kelvin holds a master's degree in accounting and professional consultancy and a bachelor's degree in finance and accounting, both from Villanova University. His dedication to empowering professionals with cutting-edge technology has made him a prominent figure in the business world. Thank you, Kelvin, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We are also very honored to have Nihar Naigaonkar, who's the director of product at Zeni, an AI-based financial operations platform for startups. He works closely with Zeni founders Swapnil and Snehal Shind to bring real-time insights to startup founders by streaming all business financial operations into a single platform. Launched in 2019, Zeni has raised over $45 million from Elevation Capital, Sama Capital, and others. Born in India, Nihar immigrated to the United States to pursue his Master's of Engineering in Computer Science at Cornell. After working for 4 years in companies such as Microsoft and LinkedIn, he decided to leap in the world of fintech and startups. For the last 7 years, Nihar has worked to bring the latest technological advances to business and consumers in digital payments, shopping, or simply transferring money to their friends and family. Prior to Zeni, Nihar worked at Affirm, a buy now, pay later company, and WhatsApp. So thank you, gentlemen, all for joining us tonight. We are really honored to have you here and to discuss an emerging topic, a very interesting topic in AI, which I don't know, in higher ed, we've been just talking about this and working with this last week, having several panels and lectures to discuss this. And tonight we have the opportunity to discuss it with many of our alums and friends joining here tonight. In the news, President Biden this week just issued an executive order to put AI, to put some boundaries around AI as it pertains to national security and consumer rights. And things are changing every day in this exciting world. So we're going to start by asking each of our panelists just to talk about their experiences using AI in the workplace. So, Kelvin, can we start with you?
Sure. So Kelvin Johnson, as mentioned, CEO, co-founder at Brevity. And essentially, we've created an AI-powered tool that helps people. Our main focus right now is on dynamic conversation. So whether that's preparing for a job interview, you can literally use our software to have a back and forth dialogue where you enter your resume, your LinkedIn URL, and the job description of the job you're applying for. Our software it creates all the questions and answers, allows you to practice, and AI scores how you perform that interview. We use it for sales teams, basically any dynamic conversation you can think of. Our main focus is on enterprise sales teams when it comes to mastering the different sales conversations in their sales process. So that's what we sell, but even just internally how we use AI, as a CEO of the company, I even use it as a mini mentor where I'll type in my issue, concern, whether it's another team member or, a strategic challenge I may be having. I make sure I put in a good amount of information, like I would ask a mentor. And then AI spits out, answers back for consideration. Again, obviously it's up to me to use it as a judgment call, but I would say, obviously what we sell is very AI driven with the whole, being able to, simulate a real conversation with over 10 voice personas in the software. But also there's been a lot of internal use for efficiencies, whether it's email formation or mentorship, or even I use it to develop our pricing for our company. So there's so many different use cases. The world's your oyster with it.
Thank you, Kelvin. We look forward to hearing more from you about this. Nihar, could you please tell us a little bit about your work?
Sure. Thank you, Michelle, and super pumped to be here. So thank you for the opportunity. My name is Nihar. I'm a director of product at Zeni. We are a Palo Alto-based startup, and really help our startups with our customers who are startups across the United States with their financing, accounting, bookkeeping, and anything to do with finance, their needs. Our website is zeni.ai. So we have been literally born just before the pandemic, scaled using AI technologies. But it's suddenly gained a lot of prominence now, in the last few months and a year. So we've just scaled on AI. We have been doing automation for a long while, automating the basic daily tasks, what any person would do on the finance and in the finance world. But using AI now, using Gen AI technologies, we have been starting to recommend tasks, and send out communications to our customers around anything to do with finance. This would include their P&L, balance sheet reports, and also insights on how they're doing on a monthly basis. What is their burn rate, and how many months do they have till they need to go and raise funding from investors. I think we've been working with hundreds of startups across the country, and AI is the center at the moment at Zeni.
Thank you very much. That's super exciting. I wish I had you when I was doing my startups. That's great.
Absolutely.
And Matthew, would you like to tell us a little bit about your work?
Sure. Yeah, sure. As Michelle mentioned, I'm not on the business side of this. I'm on the scholar side of this, and so I teach about AI ethics, and I teach it to engineers, and half my students are computer engineers, but even beyond that, all students. And so when you ask about AI in the workplace, for me, it operates on sort of three different levels. There's sort of the immediate, challenges that AI brings to the classroom. We've all read the articles about, the college essay is dead, and because AI can, ChatGPT and other large language models can basically do a lot of the basic writing that the early element, undergraduate essay would do and whatnot. So they're sort of upending and disrupting what we do. And so that's the immediate challenge for not just me, but the professors that I work with every single day. and then, but as a professor in an engineering school, and particularly working with computer scientists, computer engineers, the notion of like, how do we prepare our students for an AI world, a world where AI is going to be very much a part of this, and how do we give them the tools to be engaged in part and utilize the tools that my fellow colleagues here are putting out into the world, right? How do we think about this, and how is this going to change our world itself? And so that's sort of the second level in which I think about this. And then on the sort of research and writing level, I do a lot of, you know, the research and writing I've been doing lately is all around the notion of like, well, what limits do we want to put on this, and how do we think about the long-term consequences of AI, and how it's going to affect our society, how it's going to affect the ways in which we interact as humans, the ways in which we understand each other, and what are sort of the ethical, just the broad question of what are the ethical implications of living in an AI world. And so on all three of those levels is sort of where I've been engaging with this, both directly and indirectly, in my work. So.
That's fascinating. That must keep you up all night. At this time, I'd like to invite our audience members to use the chat function you may see there at the bottom of your screen to kind of write to the group and say and describe how do you describe AI? What do you think of when you think of AI? And I think some of those comments might be helpful for us as we're shaping this discussion. Also, as we're going along, there is a Q&A box at the bottom. You can use that to post any questions that you may have, and we will try to get to as many questions as we can as we're going through tonight's discussion. So chat to tell us how you would describe AI, and then Q&A for any questions you may have for our panelists. So we'll keep you busy while you're sitting there tonight. I'd like to move on to another question. We hear a lot about the amazing advantages of AI, and there are also things can get, you know, kind of blown up. There may be some misconceptions out there about AI. I know there are. So could you tell us what you think some of the advantages are to AI, and also some misconceptions that you may have heard, people just not understanding yet what it is, or taking it out to something that it's not yet, or may never be. So Nihar, would you be able to comment on that?
Sure. So from a personal opinion, and when my 8-year-old son, he asked me, like, what do you think AI is all about? Again, like, the description is, it is simple enough, where, like, AI is there to help you with repetitive tasks, making it automated. And then you can actually think of a future where you don't have to really do your homework, but there would be something else which would be assisting you. Isn't it like Alexa or Google Home, right? It is similar there. But from in a workplace environment, at Zeni, we take anything to do with AI very seriously, because there are 3 tenets there, which is privacy and security. And then what kind of value can we provide to our customers? That's the second pillar. And the third pillar is obviously ethics, which Matthew brought up. There's a lot of consideration there as to, like, who are we interacting with? What kind of technology is, AI really, what are we using? And how are we using it? That's where we, make sure we follow these 3 tenets at Zeni. And everyone's data, it's financial data at the end of the day. So we are we want to make sure it's private and secure. And also what kind of value we deliver to our customers is, at the end of the day, they don't have to really think about problems which existed, a few years back. Like, how do we really go to, Excel sheets, calculate the data, how much money do we have remaining? So everything is, generated through AI, and provided those insights are delivered to our customers. So yeah, I think, from that perspective, it does feel that, AI, the other thing which has come up is, will AI take away jobs? At Zeni, we make sure that everyone is secure with using AI-based technology. It's only there to, like, enhance their jobs and not really replace their jobs.
Very good. Thank you, Nihar. Kelvin, What do you
Yeah,
think? Are there any advantages or, well, obviously advantages, you're using this for your whole business, but or misconceptions that you hear?
yeah. So certain, we our ideal customer profile is, vice presidents of sales, people that are, heads of what's called sales training, and there's a assumption that it's going to replace my job. And at the end of the day, it's still about, it's only as good as your inputs, right? So, for example, if your team has not found what's called product market fit, and you're trying to use, our software, and you don't have a great sales process, like bad data in, bad data out. You're just practicing something that already doesn't work more, right? So it's not a, I call it an augmentation tool. What it does do is it's time savings. So before Brevity role play, a lot of managers were having to do one-on-one role playing with their sales team, which is very time intensive. It People feel judged when they're in a group role playing session, and like if me and my co-founder are role playing, there's a jovial nature to our relationship. How realistic is that going to be? So, one, it's a time saver in our use case for managers, and it also provides an effective way to simulate a real human conversation. And some people have the fear that it's going to replace sales development reps. Who wants to, in this age of digital information overload, people want to have a regular conversation with a human. And in the B2B world, it's not really a transactional sale. It's not a quick sale, and you have to build rapport. You got to qualify pain. It takes a human to get that done. And I don't see a world where, in a complex sale, you're going to get replaced. AI is going to replace someone actually selling. So the replacement of humans, I think, is just going to make us more efficient and more effective in our desired roles.
Thank you. Thank you. Matthew, do you have any, in your research, have you come across any concepts about misconceptions or total advantages?
I think the biggest misconception that I believe to be out there is this notion that AI is going to become like a sentient partner in our lives, like another species that we interact with on a one-to-one basis. That's personifying AI more than it probably should be, and making it's building AI in human image instead of what it actually is. And so I think so. Technology is advancing, and it's advancing rapidly. This notion that that AI is going to become sentient. I saw one of the responses to your question in the chat, that their initial view of AI was Will Smith movies from the 1990s of iRobot, and Asimov stories from the 1950s of these robots that have become sentient and take over. I don't see that happening. But I do see humans using AI in evil ways, right? And that's or benign ways that have evil outcomes, right? They're not trying to necessarily be evil, but they're also not paying attention to the consequences of their actions. I worry more about I worry less about AI becoming a sentient being, and more about the interaction of humans and computers sort of becoming one, where we are enhancing human experience and human lives, and also the injustice there of like who gets access to these things and who doesn't. And so this sort of catastrophic AI is going to take over the world narrative is the biggest misconception. But I think on the other end, just to go to the other end of the spectrum there, though, I also think this notion of AI is just a tool is not really fair to what AI is actually capable of. That AI is not just a calculator. it's not, ChatGPT replacing the essay is not the same as the calculator when calculators got added to math classes, right? It's actually changing the way we think. And another comment I saw in the chat was, people's kids using using AI to help them with their homework and stuff, and whether or not this is de-skilling them, right? I do think, when we moved from paper math to calculator math, we didn't de-skill, we didn't stop learning how to do arithmetic. But I think AI has the potential to really leave us with less skills that we can't do. And I think this fits with Kelvin's point that, like, if you don't come in with the skills, right, and the right things, you're not gonna be able to do it as well. But I think and that may be true. That may be true for the business environment. May be true for certain elements. But I do also worry that that we are going to get to the point where certain things we take for granted that AI will just do, and then we stop doing it. Like, how many of us can work on our cars these days, right? It used to be that everyone changed their own oil. Now we've de-skilled to the point that we can't. AI is going to take that and exponentially make it worse. That so many of the things that AI is going to do for us, or AI is going to be integrated into things that we could do simply before, and now we can no longer do simply because AI is part of this thing. And that's actually the problem with the car, with changing oil in the car and whatnot, is that we've complicated our cars so much, and so AI is going to do that in many ways. And so that it's not just a tool. That's my, on the other end of the spectrum, it's not just a tool. It's a tool that has the potential to really disrupt.
Yeah. I'd like to go to a question from the Q&A session here, from Ben, who's trying to see how AI is being used in the workplace and creating healthy boundaries for it. It has an example of an administrator who was a poor writer who's suddenly become a page or more emailer, but with very robotic script. So maybe having more words, but not saying it in exactly a human way or a connecting way. So he's asking, really, how can an organization handle how people are using AI, but maybe not to be so positive in the workforce? Are there any ideas that you have about training a workforce and how to use AI, so that it's not just, copied and pasted over?
It's that, maybe a slight tangent, but like in my world, in the sales world, it is very frowned upon. Like, there's a concept of hashtag spamming your TAM, where like people can just tell you're using AI, and it is the biggest turnoff when it comes to, like, being an actual human is a differentiator. People can tell when you're leveraging AI. So it may not answer your question directly, but at least from a prospect's eyes, if they look at, I can tell when someone used AI to like do a cold, unsolicited email to me. And I just think that the tone starts at the top with leadership, right? And whoever the managers are, you got to have style guides, writing. Writing is so important. And I just think the tone starts at the top there.
Kelvin, do you think, is that a product of the capacity of AI right now, that we're not going to get to the point where AI is going to get better at doing these things and you're not going to be able to tell quite as easily?
Do I think there's opportunity for it to get better?
Well, if it gets better, does that change the way we understand it? Right?
I mean, a lot of it goes down to the skill of what I said earlier, the inputs, right? So like, yeah, if you're not getting super precise with your ideal customer profile and their needs, and you're doing the real diligent, research, even if you use AI, it takes really good prompting and put this in layman's terms. It's just a lot of, and I think you can get there, but like just the individual sales rep just write me a cold email to this person, and you can just easily tell, because that goes back to the skill part we were talking about earlier, is like why write the 5-paragraph essay. Again, I don't know too much, like it's not my subject matter, but like those are hard skills you still need to learn. Like AI should be cut off. Like I think there's some essential skill sets that's going to make you actually use the AI even better. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, as an educator, that's definitely part of the conversation we're having right now is how do we take these tools? But we're also trying to predict for the future, right? And so I guess that's my question in general for those in the field is to say, well, if the problem right now is that you can tell when somebody uses AI and that's a turnoff, what happens when you can't tell, right? How does that change? How does that change the equation? Is it now okay to use AI, or is something still lost there, but we just can't tell anymore?
Well, if you can't tell, that's fair game. You know what I mean? Like from at least in the essence of a sales perspective, if you can tell that if you got your homework, you got the book meeting, and you're moving things along the sales process, cool. But in terms of like what's going to be valuable to prepare our students to be the best in the real world, and I think we talked about this before, is the critical thinking skills, right? And being able to connect the dots. So, my 2 cents is like, how are we preparing that skill set instead of just, being able to, because I use AI sometimes, and because of my judgment and my management consulting background, I'm able to quickly say, that's not going to work. Or I'm going to change the prompt and not take it at, face value.
Right.
Yeah. So you're still using a lot of the skills that you've learned through life to assess the answers you're getting and respond to those, or morph it into more of what you want and what you think.
Like a recent one I did is, we sell to a decent amount of universities, and the price I charge to, a striker is going to be substantially different to a Nova or University of Minnesota, right? And I'm going there and I'm like, this is my product. This is what I'm currently selling. This is the price point to sales teams. How would you tier this out for the number of students at a school? And then I asked the question, give me your logic as to why. So it's like, you have to have there was a lot of inputs to get a relatively decent output. And it's like, how can we give people the skill set to even know, like Google's great, but it's like bad search in, bad search out. So I'd like, what are we doing on the top of the funnel to make sure people know how to think so the AI can even drive to a good outcome?
Yeah. Thank you. It's very good. We have a couple more questions in the Q&A. I'm not sure if any of you have experience with facial recognition, but just picking up your iPhone now, you don't have a choice. I resisted so long getting rid of my iPhone 8 because I didn't want facial recognition, but now I'm all in, so that's where I go. And with your passport, everything that if you're just shopping in some stores, there's a lot of facial recognition going on. So there's are issues of privacy around that, and also around misreading. And the question is, misreading 50% of Black women is the quote. Maybe because a lot of times, I guess the AI is not trained with a diverse population of people. I think we all have come to understand that. So would you feel comfortable commenting on that aspect of AI? Maybe the one would be the facial recognition component, or two would be just how it's trained, how these different platforms are trained, and if they're trained with a diverse population. Nihar, do you have any comments on that? What's happening in the valley, man?
Just thinking about it, and it's a very fair concern, right? I mean, just to expand what Kelvin was saying earlier, that it's all about what data goes in, data comes out, right? And it is dependent on what kind of data is fed into it. While it is notion that it is valley is dominated by white men, and slowly that is improving, and it's a welcome change. It's being more diverse, like different races, genders. So it's great to see that evolution and change in the last few years. But there is always scope to do more, right? Again, like the data has to be trained across a diverse population, and this more so is more effective in and impactful in a B2C world where your businesses are set up to serve end user customers rather than business customers. So definitely the concern is valid. And again, that there has to be a more broader initiative. There has to be more communication, and just everyone has to be on the same page to provide the same kind of data. My wife works at a startup which basically helps communication between end users. So it's something like a WhatsApp, something like what Facebook Messenger is, but it is a smaller company, and they are just starting to get into AI tools. And simple example of that would be like creating a magic album when you're at an event. So if you're going to an event, you're having a dinner there. At the end of the dinner, they just create a magic album for you, of all the photos which you have taken there during the event. So the question there is what kind of photos would be selected? Would it be solve all the issues around diversity, around different choices which people have. So that is something which they are literally thinking every time when they're actually building these AI technologies. From a B2B scenario where we are serving businesses, it is under our control, right? We know exactly what kind of data needs to be fed into the system. So even when we go to GPT and then say, hey, send an email to our customer regarding a financial insight at the end of the month, we know what the data needs to be put in to make sure that the data is well trained and diverse. But I can totally relate to the fact that in a consumer world, that is definitely more impactful, and that needs to be taken care of.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any other comments?
Looks like Matthew's on mute.
Sorry about that. So I'll just say that AI bias is definitely real. It's racial. It's also gender based. It exists. It is something that any AI programming company, any company that's programming AI needs to deal with, and needs to have a policy around, and needs to have definitely policies on how they're going to be better at incorporating multiple perspectives and multiple views. At the same time, this was probably one of the first things that as AI became more and more popular, and more used, this became a thing that people started talking about. And so I do think there are examples of success stories out there, so it's not impossible. But it is something that we can't take our eye off the ball, and make sure that we say that's already done and we don't need to worry about that anymore. AI is going to exacerbate racial and gender biases. Because AI exacerbates everything. AI takes everything and exponentializes it, right? So if those biases exist already, it's only going to make them worse in practice, right? So it is certainly something we need to take care of.
Thank you. We also have some questions that are a little bit related in the chat, so I think I'm going to try to combine them together. But one is concerns about privacy, but how to leverage AI in industries like healthcare or healthcare insurance that are highly regulated. That's sort of one part of it, the privacy concerns around using AI. And the other is from Lynn from Villanova. Hi, Lynn. We see the course today of national attention regarding national security risks. And if you're putting information into, ChatGPT that is taking that information and training forward with that, and you're putting secure information into that, does that in some way pose a national risk, or could that be used in an adverse way? I'll just add one more example of this along this vein, which and in our College of Engineering, we do a lot of research, and sometimes we patent that research. And if we put any kind of finding, or if we talk to ChatGPT about something we're working on that's proprietary, does that become an open disclosure, which could come back and invalidate your patent, later on, because you're just talking to, your own robot, basically, but that's talking to everything else in the world. So these are like these kinds of questions we've been talking about and debating within our College of Engineering, and looks like others have been thinking about this too. So let me break it down again a little bit. Privacy in fields like healthcare, is it still possible to use some form of AI? Let's start with that.
So the short answer is yes. It is possible to keep data private while still using AI. Technically, and I actually just saw this come up in the chat. We do need to make a distinction between the data that's used to train the AI and the data that the AI then uses to create outputs, right? And those are often two different buckets, right? And so the data that's used to train the AI can be we can aggregate data, and we can anonymize data, and we can make sure that data is protected and made safe, and then use it within a controlled environment. So Michele, just to use your example of your facial recognition, on your iPhone, your photo never goes anywhere but your iPhone, right? It's actually saved on your phone, and in that way, it is actually protected against being up in the cloud someplace, right? And utilized in that way. The way it's actually used, the way Apple does it, is it's checking against the file on your phone itself, and it's done all locally. And so that's one way in which we can protect against some of the harms that could come from data getting out there, right? And so you can do this in healthcare too, right? With healthcare data, so long as the place where the data is kept is secure. You can put up certain firewalls and things like that can make it more secure.
And is this? Do you think that there's any traction? I've been hearing more about places having their own AI within their organization, kind of like some places have an intranet. This would be like your own, like a Nova AI kind of thing, or whatever where you would be. Have you heard anything about those types of situations, just to keep things private?
We already have startups in the Valley, doing that. So basically, it's AI as a service.
Okay.
So it is going to be a thing where a lot of companies are going to start providing those private servers. And Zeni itself is looking into such solutions where if we need to expand our AI capability, at the moment everything is, as Matthew mentioned, everything is anonymized. It is general set of data which is just sent to get basically better insights. But if we really want to enhance it, if we want to make sure there is some kind of information which makes it more customer centric, or makes it more personal to that customer, it has to be within our private walls. It has to be centralized within Zeni. So that's what we are trying to look into going forward. Yeah.
Thank you. So that might be one way of doing that. Also, in healthcare, we're very used to getting de-identified data to analyze it. And in our College of Engineering, we work with several hospitals who provide us patient data that's de-identified. And we use that not with like an open AI, but with machine learning to look for trends, statistical trends, and then try to predict outcomes or trends toward different diagnoses from that patient data early on. So I think in that way we are using AI in healthcare, but again, everything is controlled, de-identified, IRB controlled. So we do that ethically and with privacy of the patient in mind.
Well, let me respond to that though, Michele, because if the traditional ways of anonymizing data need to be updated, because as AI gets better at sorting through data, it becomes much easier to build back up an individual person, right? It's not to say, but there are methods there, and we don't need to get into the technical details here, but if you're just looking for statistics on certain things, you could do things along the lines of, like, before somebody answers a question, you could tell them to flip a coin, and if it comes up heads, they should tell you the truth. If it comes up tails, they should lie to you. You've built into their 50% chance that it's going to be a lie or not, but then you can take that back out statistically and get the right statistics without any one data set being revealing somebody is pregnant or has cancer or something like that, right? Because it could be a lie or it could be truth, but it's a 50-50 chance if you get a large enough data set. So there's ways in which you can still create, but you have to build in these things in more complex ways as our computing power gets more complex and more capable.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Putting things back together, I think that's a pretty interesting assessment. Okay. I'd like to ask you about how you would consider advising higher ed on using AI in education. So we just spent all better part of last week discussing this in our university and our College of Engineering, and we have faculty members who, for instance, are having students giving them an assignment to program in Python or MATLAB, and then they go in and they have even ChatGPT just code it for them, and then they bring it back out, they run it, they find the errors, they troubleshoot it, they go back and forth to refine it. And this has been kind of a really interesting experience because the professor was saying they have ChatGPT do the homework, then they grade ChatGPT, then he grades them grading ChatGPT to see how it all came out. I was like, it's a very meta assignment, but these kinds of things can happen because obviously, at least ChatGPT and some of these others they're not perfect. They might get, B+, maybe they're taking a class. So, but you have to figure out what's right and what's not right. And for that, we still need our basic skills. We need to be able to check and understand it. So these are some conversations we've been having in our college, but I would be interested to hear, how you would want, your kids or your nephews or nieces or anybody coming up now to be taught.
So I'll take this one from the start since it's my field, but couple things. Number one is professors need to recognize, first and foremost, that there are multiple levels of ChatGPT out there. There's GPT-3 and there's GPT-4, right? And the free one that's available to most students, but also most professors, is GPT-3. But if you pay for it, you can get access to GPT-4, and not too long out, it'll be GPT-5, which is that much better. So if you're using GPT-3 to check whether or not somebody's using GPT-4, right, that you're already losing the arms race, right? So with that said, though, the other thing I'll add here is I'm actually going to lean here on Pope Francis, because there has never been, well, actually, I don't know the history of popes that well, but in recent memory, there has not been a pope who has been more technologically aware and more engaged with the role of modern technology in society than Pope Francis has been. And he has written several of his, Laudato Si, his document on that it gets billed as his document on the environment, was actually a document on technology. He wrote about the technocratic paradigm and the changes that technology is reaching throughout our society. In Fratelli Tutti, his follow-up to that, he wrote about polarization. And he wrote about, the divisions within our society and how technology is a huge part of this. But one of his responses in Fratelli Tutti was to call for what he called a culture of encounter, in which he basically told us to be people to people, right? Stop putting devices between ourselves. Stop putting technology between ourselves. Stop leaning on, stop being at a party, but on social media while you're at the party, trying to see if there's someplace else you're supposed to be, but the ChatGPT has made this all real for us in that, ChatGPT can write in Python and ChatGPT can write the 5-paragraph essay. But all it's done is reveal the places in which professors are being lazy teachers, right? And I don't mean that in a harsh way, but I think I think we need to stop relying on technology to do the things that we are supposed to be doing and engaging with our students. So this culture of engagement we can do on a personal level, we can do it on a business level, but I think we can also do it on an educational level. That our responsibility as professors and how we teach needs to be directly engaging with students. I haven't issued an essay in 10 years. I don't ask my students to write essays. I have been doing, and this is not because of AI, but it works really well now that ChatGPT is here, is I give oral exams. I sit down with my students and I talk to them because the way I've always understood this is that, look, especially my engineering students, they're not going to go out there and write a 5-paragraph essay to make a moral argument to their colleagues about what we need to be doing in the design process, right? They're going to do that in a stand-up. They're going to do it in a design meeting, and they're going to have to make that argument orally. And so I have leaned on this oral exam as a way of like developing their communication skills. So how do we put back in the skills that are necessary, right? For me, it's oral exams. I find that really, really helpful. That's one method in which I use. But I think Francis's notion of this culture of encounter, get to know your students, right? The paper between us is also, if you hand me a paper, that's still technology between us, right? That's not me engaging with you as a student. That's me engaging with the paper, which you engaged with at the night before, right? If I take that out and remove that and sit down with you and talk to you one-on-one and really, or one-on-one or 5-on-1, I also grade small group discussions, right? I have six students talking to each other and I'm listening to what they're saying and I'm holding them accountable to have good conversations, to raise the bar of conversation, right? How are we engaging with one another? This is the biggest rule that I would tell other professors is not to get scared of ChatGPT because it's changing the way we do business. Yes, it is. And you're going to have to change the way you do business, but it's going to make you a better professor in the process because it's going to force you to engage with your students in a really, really stronger way and do all of the things that educational theory has been telling us to do for the last 20 years, right? But instead, now we're being forced to do it because the methods we've used to avoid that are being taken away from us. And so, culture of encounter. Let's get engaged. Let's get face to face. Let's have conversations. Let's be real with how we engage with one another.
Thank you, Matthew. Kelvin, what would you say about trying to instill critical thinking skills in a time when it's so easy to reach for your device to get an answer and just rely? Sometimes I feel like I think half with my brain and half with whatever's in my hand. It's like a back and forth, and the AI makes that even more so. But how would you go about recommending we maintain critical thinking skills?
Yeah, so my first job at Villanova, I was a CPA at Ernst & Young. Then my second, I was a management consulting where you had to go through the case interview process. So the way I prepared was I did 50 practice case interviews. And I felt like that was a really effective way where they're not just giving you the answer. It's not very whereas audit at one of the big fours was very procedural. This is what you need to do. Where in consulting, it's like there may be 1,000 ways to skin this cat, but how can you get better at your line of questioning and connecting the dots? So that's what helped me. And then even when I got in consulting, it was even, similar to the actual interview process where you just didn't, there was a client problem, but it might not have been the problem they actually brought up. And you had to be smart enough to hear what they're saying on the surface level and unpeel the onions a little bit to understand they're saying that problem X is the real problem. Then it's your job to unpeel the onions to see it's actually Z, and being able to, be hypothesis driven, being able to synthesize data, and then provide solutions. And going to Matt, I love your point about getting excellent about having conversations, removing the paper, removing the technology, being in the workforce, graduated Villanova over 10 years. A lot of these mistakes or people not getting traction or not getting the results is due to poor communication, whether that's in body language, whether that's verbally, whether that's written. But being an excellent conversationalist is super important. So I'm super happy Matt brought that up.
Thank you. These are good tips for us here on campus as we continue to try to educate the best and the brightest to success in the future. I think I really like to take a step forward at this point. So we talked about where we are with AI today, how you're all using and utilizing and analyzing AI. But if you think where we were 10 years ago, we were in a totally different spot, right? Where do you think we'll be 10 years from now? And and DraftKings is not listening, so you can just go ahead and lay it out. Nihar, what do you think? You're seeing a lot of startups. Where do you think we'll be ending up with these startups in 10 years?
It's a great question, Michele. So again, the pulse obviously is that, everyone is very excited about AI. Everyone wants to use. And, I think one of the comments in the chat is at Zeni also, we are not too shy, to use more like prompt, GPT and get more information. So we actually, encourage all the folks in the company to start, being more comfortable, using ChatGPT. But again, Matthew's point is true. It has to be a mix of using the technology, but also having that real world experience. It frankly, 10 years from now, if we get to a place where it's a good 50-50 mix, using technology very sharply, but also having a real world sense of how you communicate and how you interact with folks. I think that would be the ideal scenario. But I feel within 10 years, it's going to be dominated by how efficiently you could use AI. And so in the progress there, whoever is using it well, who's using it the best, will probably succeed in 10 years from now. So yeah, I think from at least at Zeni, we are like, go ahead, use it, prompt it, be creative in what kind of prompts you can give to GPT and kind of answers or responses you get. But again, use that to enhance your skills and use that to be better at your jobs, rather than just relying on it completely. I think that is the message we give internally.
Thank you. Kelvin, what do you think? Where will we be in 10 years? Are the robots taking over the world? What's going to happen?
The purpose of our company is I have a communications company. So, my bet is, going off of Matt's point, is people are going to become better conversationalists.
You think it will help, the AI will help us to double down on being better conversationalists?
Yeah, better, stronger communicators. So you can literally go onto our platform and say, I'm having a conflict, with my significant other. I'm looking for better ways to help out on XYZ situation. You go onto our platform, simulate that environment, pick the right tone of voice, be respectful. I just think, I'm biased because of what's been created over here, but I just think, in terms of communication skills verbally, that's where I see, people being able to leverage it. Better interviewing skills, better conflict resolution, the whole nine.
Thank you. Matthew? Is it
10
all
years is a,
is it all rosy in the future, Matthew?
I mean, 10 years is a long time in the world of AI. Like that, we're going to be on GPT 50 by then, at the rate they're going. So even 3 or 4 years from now, it's hard to predict where we're going to be. Is it all going to be rosy? I hope so. I mean, I'd like to hope it would be. I do think, things like the White House policy that came out this week is a step in the right direction. But that only applies so far as those who are working with government money and government contracts. It only has so much reach, and so and the government itself. And so we need some real policy and law put in place to sort of set some boundaries around it and set some expectations around AI in ways that we never did with social media. And I think there's a really important parallel here between the two, in that social media was allowed to sort of run rampant until it had already caused its havoc. And AI, we need to be a little bit more proactive about making sure we put up the boundaries for it, and then work within those boundaries to get all the benefits that it can produce. And so I think a lot is going to have to do with how well we can set up the sort of gates that we need to protect ourselves from the bias question that we've already raised, to protect ourselves from the misinformation problem that it's already raising, of like the ability to create information that looks right even when it's wrong. And that's going to be a huge problem, especially next year. There's something like 50 different companies 50 different countries, 52, I think, different countries in the world who are having national elections next year, right? We have a tool to produce misinformation at excessive amounts available to us with no restraints on it. How does that then combine with social media to put up misinformation and really disturb our electoral process? So we didn't say this explicitly, but we did in our pre-meeting, and I want to raise the point here, is that most conversations I've had around AI ethics operate on one of two levels. They either operate on that sort of existential level of like AI is going to take over the world, and AI is going to upend everything we understand, or it's going to it itself is if you program, I tell my students all the time, if you programmed AI to solve climate change and just gave it that prompt, right, and it like when it gets good enough to be able to do these things, and then gave it the power to do so, the first thing it would do would be eliminate humans, right? So like there is that existential threat of like it's going to destroy humanity. Again, I'm not really worried about that, because you'd have to give it that prompt very stupidly and give it the power to do so. Then there's this very local level of what is ChatGPT doing to my experience right now of being a professor? How are job search? I saw a whole lot of questions in the chat about job searches. How are job search algorithms, resume scanning algorithms being biased and doing, like, what are the immediate problems right now? I think those are the two levels at which the conversation tends to happen about ethics. I think there's an intermediate level that we're not paying enough attention to, which is how the existence of AI is going to upend expectations of society that we already have, right? The example I always give is the insurance industry, right? If we can use AI to accurately predict, with far greater accuracy than we've ever been able to do, accurately predict who gets what disease, the insurance industry is no longer going to function. It functions on shared risk. The ability to not know who's going to get that disease. If I can tell you're going to get that disease, I no longer insure you, right? That upends an entire expectation of our medical system right now, or our life insurance system right now, right? If we can, and so the vast amounts of knowledge that AI is going to be able to unearth is actually going to disrupt some of the things we take for granted as things we don't know. And that is going to disrupt society itself. And so in 10 years, that sort of time frame, I'm not worried about AI, eliminating humanity, but I am worried about AI disrupting social norms and social expectations in a catastrophic way. And this is why I think we need to really be having these conversations and doing things like putting in place policies that help to protect against both the bias and the immediate questions and the misinformation questions, but also the longer term, like how is this going to change our society and how do we prepare for that in a way that we didn't do with social media, right? And how do we protect against the harms? How do we predict the harms, and how do we do a pre-mortem on what AI can do, and instead of just always looking in terms of what it's capable of, but also in terms of, well, what it's capable of, right? And with a different tone. So
Well, thank you. I think we could go on for another couple of hours. I still have many questions, but I want to respect everyone's time tonight. I'd like to thank each of our panelists, Kelvin, Nihar, Matthew. Thank you so much for your time tonight, for sharing your expertise and experiences around this topic. It's really been very insightful for me, and I think for our audience. Thank you to all the Villanovans who have joined us here tonight. It's great to, these up. Basketball season starts next Monday. So we are really happy to have this group here tonight. And thank you for your participation in the chat and with the questions. It's really fun to see have a little bit of a two-way conversation here, even on this format. So thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.